Okay, so welcome to today's segment of the Third Testament Foundation live stream program. Um, Today we're gonna talk a little about the G word. Like it's almost as sensitive word as the F word, right? The G word. What's the G word, man? Can't say God anymore because that's not scientific, is it? So we're talking a little bit about God. What is God according to Martinez? Spiritual science and what is it not? I mean, for starters, God is not an old man with white beard sitting on a cloud somewhere, okay? Calling all the shots. So, we'll talk a little bit about this G word. What is it? And why are we so scared of using the G word? And when will it become popular again to use God in your day-to-day conversations with other people? So, and Martinez has a very clear and concise explanation to this. So, if we look at this symbol, it's called the eternal cosmic organic connection between God and Son of God. So, who is the Son of God? That's all living beings. And that's minerals, plants, animals, human beings, spiritual beings, all living beings everywhere is Son of God. And what is God? Well, to Martinez, God is this white dot right there. That's God. He also calls it X1 because it's nameless and it's unmanifest. It doesn't have a beginning. It never began, will never end. It's eternal. So, you basically cannot say anything about what God is. I mean, if you say that X1 is God, then it's already wrong, right? So, because it's nameless in its nature. So, just for lack of a better word, we'll use God because we've been using God for eons in this world, right? So, if there was a time when God wasn't there, then there'll be a time where God is gonna stop being. So, and that is not the case because God is eternal, right? So, um, let's look a bit about this. I'm not going to go into more details about this, how God becomes the, the Son of God, or how the unmanifest becomes the manifest, other than we have this purple star around X1, or the unmanifest, and the purple star symbolizes the creative power of the living being, and then these six colors symbolize the six basic uh, energy bodies of the living being, of all living beings. They look like this, symbolically, according to Martinez spiritual science. So we have to still uh, remember that this is not anatomically correct, but it's symbolically correct according to Martinez. Okay, so we have the six energy bodies. Again, the memory body, instinct body, gravity body, feeling body, intelligence body, and intuition body, which are manifest bodies. So these manifest bodies we call X3. and they have a beginning and they have an end. Okay, and that's what makes evolution go forward, because we keep having a satiation for something, and then we keep satisfying that satiation or hunger, and then when we're satisfied, when we have satisfied the hunger, we uh, uh, are repelled by it, right? And then we are hungry for something else, and that is in the world of form, or X3 in the temporal world, not the eternal world, because the eternal world is forever, right? No beginning and no end. Hunger and satiation has a beginning and an end. So, enough said about that. We can see also that you see the white ring is also X1 of the unmanifest, aka God of so that's symbolizing, the ring is symbolizing all other living beings in the universe. If you are at the center, or I am in the center, all the other living beings around me are also have God at their core. Okay, so that's the white ring again. X1, X2, and X3. The same triune principle applies here. So what we're going to talk about today is, because we at all times in the evolutionary spiral cycle are at one with God. At the core of our being is, our I is our God I. We're all at one with God. It's the same I we all share. And that is this eternal, unmanifest something that is. It's a nameless something. Martinez calls it X1. Okay, and that's the white. Because we cannot exist without being or having X1 at our core eternally. There will never be a time where we're not at one with God at our core. But according to where we are in evolution, at different stages in evolution, we perceive or experience this at one with God differently. We're not conscious that we're at one with God at all times. So that depends where we are in evolution. For example, if we look at these four uh, excuse me, we have these four on the left here. These are the quality of the connection between the God, the Son of God, and God. Okay, this is the quality. That's how we experience this connection between ourselves and our eternal I, aka God. So we see here at this evolutionary level, the being, the triangle symbolizes a living being, and there is an overweight of the of the yellow, which is feeling energy. So it's predominantly this being is predominantly guided by its feelings, and only a little bit of intelligence. And this is representative of all the nature, Aboriginal religions, and Native Americans, and nature beliefs that there's spirit in everything. So this is the question mark. That's how they connect to God. The next, of course, this is a continuum. So we're just taking 4 snapshots of this continuum of evolution of being day conscious, aware of our at one with God. So in the next one here, number 2, we see there's still question mark. We don't really know what God is, but we know that there is some kind of being there that is God. Could be a old man with white hair and beard sitting on a cloud or on a throne somewhere. But we don't know what God is. We have a little more intelligence, but still predominantly feeling is guiding these individuals. So these are mostly the people that were it's enough for them just to have faith and believe in what the authorities are telling them and what the priests are telling them and what politicians and teachers and parents are telling them, and that's okay. They're okay with that. They don't question authority. They don't investigate the truth or the deeper truth of what authorities are telling them. So that's for them, it's enough to believe. And at a certain time, we evolve out of that. We get fed up or satiated with it. We're no longer hungry for just believing. We want to know what's going on. What is the unhidden truth, or the cause and effect behind these authorities and their statements and so forth, right? So we evolve out of the religious context, which means that we do not use the G word anymore. We become atheists and scientists, and everything has to be based on evidence and research and so forth, right? So we have our materialistic era that we know so well today. And this era has given us a lot of good things, right? Natural sciences. So, but we see the being here is guided by predominantly intelligence energy, green, and not so much feeling energy. So there's still an unbalance now over, yeah. So this head and skull just means that the beings here believe only in the one life, that when we die, that's it. There's no more. Eternity does not exist. There's only this one life, and then when you die, you're gone. So they believe in death. They believe, atheists believe in the non-existence of God. There are actually atheist churches in America that celebrate on Sunday. They have social events and they celebrate the non-existence of God. But now there are these different branches of the atheist churches. They're starting to tell each other, well, the way you're worshiping the non-existence of God is not the right way to worship the non-existence of God. You should do it this way. So there's still an element of belief and religion in this this evolutionary stage. Yeah. And why is that? Well, that is because when you have, for example, a hypothesis or a theory and so forth, it's only probable, right? It's probabilities. You don't know for a fact. It's just a theory. So it's still basically a belief. You have to believe in something, but you back it up with science, and it's more or less probable. But then 10 years later, they find out, oh, well, we find out something new, and actually it wasn't like that. Now it's like this. So it keeps changing, right? So it's still kind of, science is still kind of have these religious child diseases. So we don't know the truth 100%. We're not 100% certain of what the truth is. And that means we're not day conscious aware that we are at one with God. In fact, we reject God and the existence of God. We deny the existence of God here in this materialistic stage. And that's okay. Okay? It's just an evolutionary stage. It's a phase everybody has to go through. So, in this last evolutionary stage where we actually are day conscious aware that we and God, or our eternal identity, is the same. Our I and the I of God is the same. God's source and me are the same. My I and your eternal I and my eternal I, are sourced in the same something that is, right? Nameless, unmanifest, eternal life force. At that, again, is at the core here, the white circle, okay? But now we actually experience it on a consistent day-to-day basis that we are, in fact, that eternal being. And when we are here, we can do things and see things in a totally different perspective that the beings in the other three stages cannot, because we can see the real cause and effect of things and why things happen and what we should do to make certain things that are not so good disappear and so forth. So what would happen if we had these beings here, and these are rare beings, right? Because they're very highly evolved. What would happen if we had these beings at least some beings, at least one in each government of all the nations in the world? If we had one being like that could see the real connection of things and could advise the government of the world, where do you think we would be? That would be interesting, I would say. So let's just read about these beings here in the stage, because Martinez writes about it in the Third Testament, the Eternal Will Picture, Volume 2. And before that, I found something about praying to God and how Martinez defines this. And he says, praying to God, there is thus an organ in the being that begins working automatically when its life is in danger. It is this organ or ability that gradually evolves to become what we call the ability of the human being to pray to God. Prayer, or praying to God, is thus not rooted in any human invention, but in an innate cosmic organic ability through which the being is eternally and organically connected to the Godhead. Whether or not the being is conscious or unconscious of this unshakable cosmic connection with the Godhead does not alter the principle at all. The animal that utters its cry of terror or cry of death is not conscious of any Godhead. It does not know to whom it cries, but nonetheless it cries out automatically about its distressed situation to an unknown object. So this is Martinez talking about what prayer is. It's actually like when I read this, I thought about, when you see these movies where, oh, the plane is gonna start to crash and you're sitting in the plane and all the people start to pray, even the ones that don't really believe in God, right? Really, all the atheists and the materialists in the third phase, they're still okay. And Martinez says, well, it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not, prayer works. So, and it's this triggered by this situation, oh, I'm gonna die, right? So this is like he calls it the cry, what is it he calls it? The cry of death, or cry of death, yeah? The cry of terror. When you're terrified, you're like, oh, that cry. In the animal, they go like, ah, automatically. This is automatic organ that we have, that once we like threaten with, like, faced with death, automatically we'll begin to do something and that is prayer. Okay, so let's go back to that was just a little parenthesis here. These beings here, phase 4, right here, that are day conscious, aware of their at one with God. So they experience that they're one with God every day. That must be nice. Imagine that you are like, you can just feel that you're this eternal being. That must be nice, yeah. You never began, you'll never end, you're just forever. So the fourth figure above the living being symbolizes the finished human being in God's image after his likeness. We see in the symbol that the being's intelligence and feeling here are in balance. That's the green and the yellow, right? In equal proportion to each other. They are equal and penetrate one another. So that's the green and the yellow in the actual cone there, which symbolizes the connection, the conscious, the experience of the connection. So feeling has thus become intellectualized, and when intellectualized, Martinez means it's a combination of intelligence and intuition energy. So feeling has thus become intellectualized and intelligence has become humanized. This in turn means that both faculties are now totally in the service of neighborly love in this being. So this is compassion, yeah? It now fulfills the law of life. It loves God above all things and its neighbor as itself. That's the law of life. Like do unto others like you want others do to you. It has become a cosmically conscious human being, a Christ, a Christ being, a being that is one with God. I mean, we're always one with God, but now at this phase in evolution, we're consciously aware of it. We're consciously aware that we are, in fact, one with God, or are this eternal I that we are. It is now the ultimate fulfillment of God's creation of the human being. It has become a human being in God's image after his likeness. That just means that it's also eternal. No beginning, no end. It experiences God, X1, as a day-conscious fact. More alive and conscious, the connection with the Godhead cannot be. The being's day-conscious experience of God is symbolized by the white triangle at the top. After this, the being is finished with having to incarnate in physical matter. It does not need to experience more physical terrestrial lives. It is through the beings in the primary consciousness of God that he reveals his infinite wisdom, his universal love, and his omnipotence. So it's through these beings that are now day conscious aware that they are eternal beings, that God source, reveals its infinite wisdom. Okay? It is the primary consciousness of this Godhead or God source that constitutes the absolutely true reality behind the physical plane. That means God, or the eternal, your eternal I, who you are experiencing in this phase of evolution that you are one with, is creating what we see in the physical plane. It is through this reality that the entire universe is governed and led. So this Godhead or God source, this God source, first eternal, unutterable one, or unmanifest eternal I of the entire universe, governs and leads all of creation in X3. Yeah, it is also by virtue of this primary consciousness of the Godhead, consisting of the highest and most perfect beings, that the keynote of the universe is love. So that means this primary consciousness of God, that's all the beings that are at this evolutionary stage where they are day-conscious aware that they are actually at one with their eternal I. They yeah, they are the perfect beings that constitute the primary consciousness of the Godhead. Okay, so the ones that are not yet awake to that, that means the other three that are not day conscious aware that they are one with God, that's the secondary consciousness of God. Okay, so let's just look before we read on here. Look at this symbol here, because if we look at this thought climate here, you see this long one with this lens in the middle. Okay, so that actually symbolize the psychic thought climate, and that is actually the thought climate we use to pray with. It's actually starting with black magic and voodoo and stuff on the lower evolutionary levels, and then it develops as we grow in evolution and go forward in the evolutionary spiral cycle to become white magic. And white magic is psychic power, and it's also prayer. So if we read about this thought climate, Martinez says that this figure symbolizes all high psychic forces and culminates in the period of evolution number 30. So that's just, here's 30, right? So this one here is the 30. So it culminates, that's where the lens is, right? That's a culmination. You see how it's beginning here, down here, and there's all kind of red, orange, and kind of brownish colors, and that's like you have voodoo, black magic, all kind of stuff here. And then it culminates here with the lenses, and then it tapers off and dies out and ends here. So we're in X3, right? We're in the temporal world, not the eternal, because the eternal does not have a beginning and an end. So this thought climate is something that we have created as an eternal being. So we see how it becomes more and more light blue, a balance between like the yellow and the green here, yeah. More like loving and stuff, intuition, things like that. So you see how they got zigzag things, that's like communication, prayer, white magic. And what does Martinez say about it? He says, while the reddish-orange colors at the bottom of the figure signify the killing principle, which in this case means black magic, the light yellow and green colors above signify the principle of universal love, in the service of which the psychic force becomes white magic. So this is the psychic thought climate, right? Psychic force becomes white magic. So what is psychic force? Psychic is your thoughts. What do you do when you pray? You concentrate your thoughts, right? So that's a psychic force of concentrated thoughts. Prayer. So here the psychic force becomes white magic. Through this spiritual or psychic force, prayer, The wonderful manifestations that we call miraculous healing, materialization and dematerialization, telepathy, organic clairvoyance, and organic clairaudience, and so on occur. These abilities enable the finished human being in God's image to be organically connected with high cosmic beings on the spiritual plane, who together constitute God's instrument for guiding and leading mankind towards becoming His image after His likeness. This wonderful manifestation, instrument of the Godhead for mankind, is what we call providence. So providence is all these beings that are actually day conscious aware that they are at one with God. So because they are day consciously aware that they are one with God, they always agree with the other beings that are at one with God, or consciously aware that they are one with God. Yeah, there are no struggles with this. Is it this way or that way? Disputes and stuff. So these beings thus constitute the Godhead's organ for interaction. The Godhead's organ. So these beings are the Godhead's organ for interaction with every single terrestrial human being. Through these elevated cosmic beings, the Godhead hears the beings' prayers and comes to a decision about them. This providence is also the world redemption itself. As previously mentioned, it is through this providence that the Godhead controls and guides the evolution of the whole of mankind, its entire transformation from animal into human being. The cosmic or spiritual co-workers of these beings are called angels. By virtue of their great psychic gifts, they can hear the prayers of physical human beings. They cannot free people from their karma, but they can, to a great extent, help those who pray earnestly in their hour of need and give them courage, energy, and encouragement to get through their sufferings. They are invisibly present everywhere. No human beings are ever outside their reach. They follow us all on our way, ready to protect us in those situations where we can be protected, and to help us in those situations where we must of necessity go through our dark karma. It would therefore be very advantageous and wise to express our situation in a prayer. It should be addressed not to these beings, but on the contrary, exclusively and directly to God within the concept of Father who art in heaven. One can also in the same way express one's gratitude and joy in living, if that is the way one feels. Even though one is unable to believe in prayer, one ought to pray all the same. God is not so small-minded that he does not listen unconditionally to the prayer of an unhappy being. Okay, so just to wrap this up, imagine now if these beings these beings that are day conscious, aware of that they're one with God. Imagine if they would be in government, like I talked about before. So like here we have the unfinished human kingdom. This is planet Earth. Right now we see all the arrows representing the different nations. They're all selfishly going in different kind of directions, right? There's no coherency or unselfish or community feeling here. It's just like every man for himself, every nation for himself, dog eat dog, nation eat nation, war, strife, and whatever. How can I get the most out of this situation, like financially, monetarily, right? Money being the right here and the guiding principle of all nations, more or less. But imagine if we had these high evolved beings within government. So we see this 12-pointed star. In the next picture, here we see how this 12-pointed star has gone to the core of the planet. So that means now that this is a planet that is governed by intuition, and that means that there are beings in government that know how to make peace on the planet. So because there are these beings in government, all the countries are working together in community with a common goal that are sourced in unselfishness. Okay, so the governments are ruled by unselfishness, which is compassion and neighborly love, right? So, and that is, I believe that we need beings that are at this high evolutionary stage where they're actually conscious that they're at one with God, so they know what's the truth and what course to take for each country in order to all countries to coexist in harmony with each other. Okay, so this Martinus calls the perfect human kingdom of the future, and eventually this will happen. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, maybe not in 100 years, but it'll happen. Maybe 500 years. Already, I think he says in 100 years, when he was alive, 100 years, the countries will start to have Christic policies in their governments. So we can see that some countries are more taking care of their citizens than others. So we're seeing this principle of unselfishness in the whole governmental structure, societal structure, gradually grow in all the countries at different rates, of course. So heaven on earth. This is a symbolic expression of heaven on earth. And what does Martinus actually say about this? So this is from the Third Testament, Volume 1, where he talks about the right and the might of the governments and the states. So the present collective experience of the whole of terrestrial mankind will thus gradually bring all its concentration to bear on this factor, the unification of might with right. So might is power, right? And right is the truth. I mean, that these high evolved beings that know that they're consciously aware with God can see what is right. We cannot always, if you're not day consciously aware that you are at one with God, you cannot see. There's no guarantee that you can see what is right. Okay, so that's why we need these beings within government as advisors or some kind of thing. And it's not like they want to have power or anything. Actually, they don't. That's the least thing they want. But they know what's right, and we need to combine that righteousness, justice, with the might, with the where the money goes. Okay, the money needs to go to the right places where it's righteous that they go. So, okay. The present collective experience of the whole of terrestrial mankind will thus gradually bring all its concentration to bear on this factor, unification of might with right. So this is where we're going gradually. It's inevitable. But as right within terrestrial mankind's community is the same as state power, and this is the uncorrupted state power, okay? And might within that community is the same as money power. The unification of right with might means that state power must have possession of the money power. Okay, so this is where the whole thing with sovereign money comes in, and the central bank should not make the money because they're privately held banks, but we need the states to make the money. Okay, state power must have possession of the money power. Okay, so and this is the uncorrupted state. This is not the state that has been lobbied by multinationals and controlled by money. Okay, this is the uncorrupted state power. So the state power that knows what is right. Okay, only right alone can possess the valuable goods, because the beings that knows what is right, the beings that know what is right, they can appropriate the goods righteously instead of totally out of proportion, but a few percent of the people on the planet owns like 80% of the might, okay, the money. So as right is represented by state power, uncorrupted state power, and this again stands for common interest or unselfishness, while money power is the expression for private interest or selfishness. So that's easy, yeah? State power, unselfishness; money power, selfishness. Then the consequence will be that unselfishness appropriates might or the valuable goods. When the spirit of unselfishness controls the valuable goods and thereby has the power, only then can peace reign. Selfishness controlling might, as is still the case in the terrestrial community, right, today, that's what we see in the world, can create only that spirit which makes one strive into actualities. The spirit of right must therefore be made the ruler of the world. Right, which has now reached its highest manifestation in the form of state power, uncorrupted state power, constitutes nothing more than a reality which is ruled by might. Okay, and let me do that again, because he talks about how the state power is not uncorrupt. So right, which has now reached its highest manifestation in the form of state power, constitutes nothing more than a reality which is ruled by might. Okay, so this is what we have today. We have governments with a whole slew of lobbyists, multinationals that are represent the might, the money power, right? It must become a reality which rules might. So the state power must become a reality which rules might. That is, state power, uncorrupted state power, must become a reality that has the money and controls the money. So then will look like this, and then there will be peace and harmony, and this is the peace, the new world where peace and harmony prosper. Okay, and we're going there. It's inevitable that we'll be there. It's just a matter of when. So on that note, I say thank you for today, and hope to see you next time in a week, and see you soon.